In this module, we're going to take a look at how we can change the transparent tables that we created earlier on in the course. It's important you know how to do this and the implications of adding and taking away fields to the underlying data in your database table. So as a reminder, let's take a look at the table we created called Z Employees. So in the SAP GUI, we can choose transaction SE11, or under the Tools menu, ABAP Workbench, and then Development, you've got the ABAP Dictionary transaction there, in case you forget the transaction code. So here it's already entered the table name for me. I'll choose Display, and we can see the 6 fields that we entered to create our table. Remember, Mandant is the client field that is automatically maintained by the system. And then we have employee, which is our employee number, our surname, forename, title, and date of birth. Now it's important to realize that whenever you want to change a database table, you run the risk of losing data, especially when you're affecting the key fields in your table. The database system itself will try and determine if you can make adjustments by deleting and creating new items which change the underlying database catalog, or whether you have to re-implement what you have already defined. Quite often with large tables, you have to manage the manipulation of the data yourself, so as to be sure that you don't lose the data. When your tasks involve just deleting fields, it's quite a simple task, but depending on the table structure and the contents, this also has certain complications. So before you start any of these database change tasks, it's a good idea to mitigate against as many risks as possible and start by using a copy of your database table. This will allow you to test out any change activities you want to make without the risk of affecting the original table and the underlying data. Now, when you copy a database table, you only copy the table structure itself. This means just the table properties, the fields, not the actual data. So let's have a look how we can copy our table. So we will step back to our initial SE11 screen. We already have our table name, Z Employees, which we will copy. And all we need to do is go to the copy button, which is Control F5, and decide on a table name that we want to copy to. So let's be very original and stick a number 2 on the end. Click the green tick for the OK. Then as normal, we'll be asked for a development class. And as in the last modules, what we will choose is local object. That's all there is to it. You've now got a copy of the table. So we have Z Employees 2 in our database table there. We can choose Display, and we can see an exact copy of the original table. Now, one thing to note is that even though we've copied the table, we can't use it yet, because if you have a look at the status, it says new. We need to activate our program. So we'll click the Change button, and then we'll click the Activate button. Now remember, our table uses data elements which use data domains that we've already set up in the previous module. So all of those objects are already active. And when we activate our table, all it needs to do is just activate the table itself, no other objects behind it. So now we can take a look at the table. And if you remember, I said all we do is copy the table structure, not the contents. So if we look at the table contents, we can see that we've got no records in the table. So what we will do now is enter some records into our table so that later on, when we try and add fields and take fields away, we will see various warning signs coming up from the system to tell us we may be about to delete data and it'll be unrecoverable. So let's go ahead and just choose we'll step back. Then we'll choose the Utilities menu, Table Contents, and Create Entries. So now you should be familiar with this screen. We can just create a number of employees. Super original. Let's do the drop down box for the date of birth. Just so I get the format correct. And save our record. Okay, so now we've entered 3 records, and that should be enough to then allow us to change the database and see what effects it has on the data. So just to make sure everything's been entered correctly, we'll just choose the Contents view and click Number of Entries. We have 3, and we can execute and have a look at the contents. So let's step back. We'll go to the Table Design, and what we're going to do is add a brand new field, and we'll make it a non-key field. And this is the same process that we went through when we added fields originally. So let's have a field called Initials. Remember to use the Z, and remember this is a brand new data element. So I will double click and use forward navigation to generate it. And for the domain, let's see if there's an existing one called car3, and there is. Character field length 3. So we can use that one. Yeah, there are our field labels. We'll activate that data element. Local objects. There we go, that data element's now active. So now when we step back to the table, we can see it's brought through the field title and the actual data type of the field. Let's add another field, this time called Gender. And no prizes to guess what we're going to call the data element. We can see the data element doesn't exist, so forward navigation, yes to save the table, yes to create the data element. We'll give it a name and just copy it to the clipboard for when we do the field label. And here we'll just make it character 01. And we can see it already exists, which is fine. Activate the object, then we'll step back and we have the field. Let's have another one called salary. Z salary. Double click. You know the drill. Now this one is going to be a currency field because it's a salary. So what we're going to do is choose a currency field called CURR9. I think that exists. Yeah, there we go. And this is a currency field. We can see it's got a length of 9 with 2 decimal places. You can create your own or search in the data dictionary and use a different one if you like, but I know this one exists and I've used it before. Go to field label, local object, activate it, and step back. Now, one important thing with the salary field is, because it's a currency, we actually need to include a separate currency field that is attached to the salary to indicate what currency the salary is in. So I'm from the UK, so this for me would be GBP, Great British Pounds. If you're in the US, it'd be US dollars. So to do that, let's create a brand new. I'll tell you what we'll do. First of all, I'll show you the error message. If we try and activate the table without a corresponding currency field. Here we go, errors occurred. Let's have a look. So what this is saying is we need a reference field, a reference table to hold the type of currency. So let's step back and do that. Let's call it e-currency. And the actual data element, we will use one that already exists. Because currency fields, there should be no need to create your own because they should already exist in the system. And I know there's one called CURCY. I'll use that and press enter. And there we can see it's a currency key field with a length of 5. Now that's all well and good, but what we need to do next is tell the system that our salary field is going to reference our currency field. So this brings us on to this currency tab. And when we flick to it, we can see that because we are using a field type currency, this field is now available for us to fill in. And what we will do is enter our currency field in there, and we just need to put our table name in here. So we're going to say this currency key field is a reference field for our salary field. So now we can activate the table and everything is good. Let's have a look at what this actually does. Let's go and enter another record or change an existing one and see what options we have for entering our salary and currency.